Zalem Nel, dit was daarom 'n pak slaag gewees. That was a hiding of note. The Sharks. No.
We're talking about...
I love laughing at my own jokes.
What are we talking about? Lions?
Obviously the Lions.
42-0. I mean, I know it was windy, and that had a massive influence on the game, but a 0-0 second half after conceding 6 tries in the first, I'm not sure whether to be impressed or disappointed, mate. I mean, how do you go from conceding 6 tries in the first half? Admittedly, you have the wind in the second. You can't put any points on them, but you also deny them any points. Just a weird game. A very odd game. I don't know if you saw the one restart, the wind just blew the ball straight back over the halfway line. I don't know.
I switched off on 42 minutes when it was 42-0.
Yeah.
I did send Nick Mallet a text of condolences because he was in the SuperSport studio and he had to endure that. So
match report was written after 50 minutes, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just looked at Cash van Rooyen before the game, and in the interview he said the team's up for it. The disappointment of Cardiff, they're going to put behind them. That 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Naught is unacceptable. They've come to get points. But I didn't realize... I thought he was talking about league points.
He was talking about any points, mate.
Blanked. 42-0, eh? It's a shocker.
Mate.
It's a horror show.
I said the Lions would win by 3. They didn't even score 3 points. It was an absolute shocker. A good game to forget.
Every time we cuddle the Lions...
It's me. I'm the problem. It's definitely me.
You wore their Spider-Man jersey. They've never been the same.
Exactly. I shouldn't even be talking about them. I am the problem.
You should actually just dismiss them and say they've got no chance.
Dismiss who?
No price. Yeah. I mean, these are guys who can't even score a point. Correct. And then they'll win. Because every time we show the Lions love and we say, it's not over yet, they prove to us it is.
It is very much over, mate. Yeah, exactly.
Do you think we want to go on the road in a playoff again?
But listen, one thing we can say about that is Glasgow is a proper team. I mean, we knew that. They are the defending champions. But those guys can play. Franco getting back some reinforcements at just the right time. JP Dupree is about 3 meters tall, making his starting debut for Glasgow. So they're getting their guys back. I'm sure we'll talk about what Jake said and the Bulls and all that a bit later. But as we get to the sharp end of the comp, the Glasgow is kind of pulling it together quite nicely.
What I like about Glasgow is, I mean, it's like our 5th franchise, okay? Franco Smith, Carl Nell, Carl Steyn.
Yeah.
Carl Nell. There I'm giving him from Treble Group. I'm giving him a cap.
You're having a run, mate.
Carl, you on the wing. It's a glorious weekend, okay? So, and then you mentioned Dupree. It's not like you're mentioning McDonald, McIntyre.
Yeah, exactly. There's Fenter on the bench as well, mate.
So, but they are a good side. I mean, when they played the Stormers, and people still don't understand just what a good effort it was from the Stormers to be in a position to be beating them at that stage. And then they scored that late try. They got the win in Stellenbosch. Everyone's, how come the Stormers lose to Glasgow? They're the defending champions. They got on a plane. They flew to Loftus last year and emphatically beat the Bulls in a final in front of 50,000 people high on Ricky Lowe.
Yeah.
Steve Hofmeyer, Ricky Lowe, and Bless Bridges.
Yeah.
Live, learn.
But you say people don't really know, like Glasgow. South Africans kind of have to come to terms with who Glasgow, the Warriors are. But they only had 6,600 people at the stadium.
But it only takes 6,600 people.
You know, so that's it. That's the sort of, it's just a very different ball game, isn't it? You compare to what the crowds that we can pull for some of our derbies. And you're not just flying to another hemisphere. It's like another rugby world.
It is, eh? And the pitches are not grass. The wind is icy. It's cold. The beer tastes different.
Very cold.
But what doesn't change is that it's 7 points for a converted try. And they were like,
doesn't matter to the Lions, mate. Whether it was 8 or 9, it wouldn't have made a difference.
Imagine if they were playing in the Varsity Cup. We were about 73-0.
Yeah, absolutely. Try of origin.
9-point tries.
Especially if Henko Fenter got across the line, mate. That try would have originated in Bloemfontein. That's about 400 points.
That's what they're banking on. Is that worth 43? You bet you it is. But I got home, I ended up watching the Sharks match out at Boston and Burgundy. And obviously no Sundown, so you actually get to see quite a bit as well. But 9 Springboks, I mean, 4 of the World Cup winning pack, starting pack, led by Sia Khaleesi, Oxen Chair there, Bongi, Vincent Koch. Backline laden with promise and Springboks up against an academy team effectively with good experience to balance it. But 20 internationals not playing for Leinster. Geordie Barrett, Achilles Snyman, not in the mix. They'll be playing in the Champions Cup last 16 this weekend. To win 10-7, it's a great compliment to Leinster for them to have got that victory and to have been a kick away from victory against the Bulls. Those are our top two teams, third and fourth, without 20 of their players. What does that say to Plum and the Sharks?
Get the class ads, mate. I don't know. So, I mean...
Still got your passport, Plum, because you kept me going back.
I hate losing, but that game was my favorite game of the weekend because of sort of the context of that thing. So that was just... I felt like I was watching the 2009 Stormers again after Jacques and Rassie had come on board and Jacques started to grow that culture of defense. So in the week leading up to this game, it was all about how, okay, Leinster, they haven't picked Geordie Barrett. They haven't picked the Viking. It's their academy team. They're playing this Bok-laden Shark side in Derbs, where it's tricky conditions. The Sharks came out. I think they just rolled up and thought, we've got these great names on paper. It's pretty much in the bag. They started chasing the bonus point try from the offing. First kickable penalty goes to touch. And that is exactly... like it is prime Jacques. They must rename this game the Jacques Nienaber Ball, because he goes into that game with a team that is underdogs. They're log leaders. They got a guy in Ken Healy who's played about 4,000 matches. It is an academy team full of youngsters, and they're all desperate to make it up to the next level. And the only way for them to do that is to beat this Bok-laden. So they are massively motivated. They'll do whatever Jacques says, and what Jacques says is go up and tackle as fast as you can, which is what they do. Absolutely. Ambush the Sharks in that regard. Sharks didn't know how to play out of that chaos. And as the game wore on and the points didn't come, the Sharks just got tighter and tighter and the lump in their throat got bigger and bigger. I just really enjoyed watching, sort of knowing Nienaber's influence and his ability to just get the best out of a team defensively and stoke that appetite for defense. It was fabulous to watch. And one thing we know about Leinster is their maps and their structures on attack are slick. So you marry that with Jacques' defense and youngsters who want to impress. I mean, that John Mackey, their hooker, I mean, he is easily the most punchable guy in rugby at the moment. I've never seen him before. I hadn't noticed him before. He had an absolute blind over game, got under the skin of every single Sharks player there. Ireland produced great hookers. This is another one. Just absolutely frustrated. Everybody was chasing that guy. And eye off the ball, Ireland get out of there with the win. So great result for them. Big gut check and reality check for the Sharks, I would say, because you can't be a team that's just going on experience, reputation, and ability. You kind of need to put it all together.
Well, the investment that there is in the Sharks, the big name players that there are there, you shouldn't be dropping a game at home to a team missing 20 of the internationals, no matter how good their structures are, how good their depth is.
Yeah.
I could understand it if those 4 World Cup winning Springbok forwards weren't playing. The fact of the matter is the Sharks have a power scrum, a power set piece that was underutilized. It was one of those games Jordan Hendricks and the halfbacks didn't control the game particularly well. You said the mindset of we're going for 5 points here. Get the win first.
It's Leinster.
And get the win first, especially in conditions that are humid. Well, I would assume they're humid because that ball was dropped a lot.
Yeah.
And it was as if it was a very different mindset. You saw the struggle that they gave the Bulls and the fight that there is in this Leinster side. And like you say, the Jacques Nienaber effect. If anyone knows, it's Siya Kolisi and those guys. They know Coach Jacques, and they know him well. And you could also see that blitz defense, that rush defense.
But just think about that. Jacques knows those box like the back of his hand. So he structured that whole defensive system just to take advantage of that info.
No, completely.
Yeah.
And, we spoke just briefly before we started the show. Why did Siya Kolisi not go for the draw? 10 all. The way they were playing, your view is they were never going to score. I just felt that he went for it because a draw gets them one extra league point, and also like we haven't lost to Leinster. But a victory, had they somehow managed to kind of fashion it, would have got them a lot closer to the Bulls on the table.
Yeah.
Now they've dropped again behind the Bulls, but they go off to play a last 16 in the Champions Investec Cup. It's not the kind of result they had wanted, given Andre the Giant was back. the only guy you looked up and you saw Apele Fasi in the stands looking aghast as I was.
Yeah.
But for the rest, it's pretty much most of them are in there at the moment.
I think him, yeah.
I know Eben obviously is a massive factor when he plays, but I looked at that Leinster side and you just have to applaud them. But none of them are going to start in 6 days' time in the last 16 of the Champions Cup.
Yeah.
How do you then motivate your team and say, as this URC progresses, you can go to Dublin Sharks and you can actually knock over Leinster's A team when you couldn't even knock over the B team at home? Is that fair? Was it like no one knocks over anyone really at home because of the humidity? We're a better team on the road. Because the match against Bordeaux, where they took 60 in the Champions Cup, would suggest otherwise.
Yeah, no, I think it's underlined what we've already said about the Sharks. It's about this is a team that probably needs a little bit more of a framework for how they're going to play, because I think there's a lot of decision making by individuals in that Shark. And I'm speculating, I don't know this, but it seems to me like it's very player driven. And that's why you get these roller coaster results, is when the players guess right and make the right calls, good things happen. And I mean, that's true of all teams, but the more structure you have to work around, the more consistency you have and the more cohesion you build over time, I would say. The guys that are standing out are the youngsters, Ethan Hooker, Lorenzo Julius, those are the guys that are performing. I thought Andre the Giant had a fantastic game. I was very impressed. Great to see Andre being Andre, running over Oaks, denting Oaks on defense, put in a little kick there as well. I thought he had a great game. But the Hendrickson brothers are just a little bit loose, maybe not as tactically efficient as they can be. And that's maybe why the Sharks didn't convert some of that set-piece dominance that they had at times into points. I mean, 7 points from that team in 80 minutes. If I said you pick a side, name a team that's going to hold that Shark side to 7 points in 80 minutes, you would have picked some real names, not academy guys. So, disappointing result.
And those guys, I mean, I know Ergia Snyman and Geordie had big games. Geordie Barrett at Loftus. But it took a yellow card for the Bulls to kind of get into double digits and then fashion a very unlikely win. So they'll look back on this tour. It's probably the best fortnight for Leinster of the whole competition, to know that they have that caliber of player in reserve who can come to South Africa, go to Loftus, like I keep on saying, be within one scrum, one kick from victory, and then back it up the next week and keep that Sharks team down to 7 points.
Totally.
And do enough. Outscore them 2-1. Do enough and just show the mongrel and the fight. And I mean, that's just, the talk from one of the greats, Brian O'Driscoll, the Irish greats, that Jacques Nienaber maybe not good for Irish rugby because he's changed the way they play from Leinster into the Irish team and that. Accusations he may be destroying the fibre of Irish rugby. Well, he's certainly doing something that we haven't seen from their teams before. Yeah. That hardened edge coming to the Republic as well. Where Leinster previously, when they've come with the academy side, all out attack, but haven't shown that kind of mongrel to upset the teams.
That is spot on. And I think that's bullseye, because like I said, Leinster's systems are amazing and they will leave South Africa thinking, we don't need to do too much from a systems point of view. Our academy guys did what they did. But that edge that the Irish came out with in that game is 100% a Jacques thing. It's a Jacques trait that he puts into his defenses. And that's very encouraging if you're an Irish fan, because the one thing that the European teams generally struggle with against their Southern Hemisphere rivals is that physicality and that mental edge. So Jacques definitely transplanting lots of value there. And this result proves it.
Again, we talk about this edge and this hardened mentality. Leinster top of the table, 20 Irish internationals, wonderful coaching structure, led operationally by Jacques Nienaber, World Cup winning Springbok coach. Glasgow Warriors second, Franco Smith, South African captain, whole bunch of South Africans in there, hardened edge. Saw an interview that Carl Steyn did with our mates Rudy Page and Jean de Jong on Behind the Ruck, one of South Africa's favourite podcasters as well. And he spoke about how the mentality change that had to come within the squad when Franco arrived, that he was used to it, coming through the ranks at Stellenbosch University, Greek was. He said those Scottish players just couldn't quite understand it initially, but it was a shock to their system.
Yeah.
Because just the attention to detail, but the discipline and the requirements that were there. And really, I mean, Dave Rennie was there before, and then he was a bloody good coach. One of your favorites.
Yeah.
And he couldn't quite get it right with them. And Franco has definitely got it right. I just hope he stays there for his own development, doesn't seek out an international job like Wales. Let Michael Shaker go there, poor bugger.
Yeah.
But he is then, to me, an automatic replacement for Gregor Townsend within the Scottish system, because how long are they still going to give Gregor to fulfill this dream of being more than a top 5 team? The bridesmaids always go to Scotland, the best team we've ever seen. How many South Africans? 6. How many Kiwis? Oh, 5 this time. Any Aussies? 2, but they've gone back to play for another country.
Yeah.
Franco is now working with one of their teams and being hugely successful. And just, they're also a team that plays good rugby. There's a humility about them. There's not that arrogance, and they're a very likable team to watch. They're a very, very good side, the Glasgow Warriors.
Yeah.
And the fact that they've backed up winning the competition by being so strong, being second on the table, and being very, very competitive in the Champions Cup, going through to the last 16 rounds, they can balance, they can marry the two. And there's lessons in that for South Africa's teams that also bemoan lack of depth when we look, can we play in both competitions? Can we be successful? We also need to lose that mentality, because if your structures are right, you can send an academy side up north and they should be competitive. Leinster are showing the way, Glasgow are showing the way. And the Bulls are the one team I thought would show the way. So you get results like Saturday, 63-24 against Zebre. Zebre is knocked over Ulster in Belfast. They should have knocked over the Sharks last week. They were down 2 quick tries and then came back, and then boom. The Bulls scored some fantastic tries. And to put 63 points on a team that's fighting for a top 8 playoff.
Spot on.
But then compare that to the week before that. They just looked nowhere. And they did that with resting their powerhouse props.
Yeah.
Explain the Bulls to me.
So I can't explain the Bulls, and I would love to meet somebody who can. And that's hard for me to say, because I'm a huge Jake White fan, and there's a ton of those players of that Bulls team that I really, really like. And I love the whole Loftus, Highveld, Fortress thing. That's been our flagship union in Super Rugby. So I've just never watched a game where a team wins by almost 40 points so unconvincingly, though. It's just the most bizarre thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, you watch that game, and if you'd watched pieces of it, you would have thought, if Zebre had come away with the win, you wouldn't have been shocked. And yet they lost by almost 40 points. There's something about that Bulls team that just is, I don't know, the opposite of slick. I don't really know how to explain that.
Look, if they had come away with the win, the Italians, I would have been shocked, because it would have meant 64 points. Because that's what they had to score to win that one.
Indeed. I mean, the Bulls were, on the scoreboard, overwhelmingly convincing winners. But if you watch the performance, there were very few moments in that, aside from the try moments. There were lots of instances in that game where you're just like, these guys aren't really sure about what they're doing.
But doesn't it happen when you get a quick start? When you feel you can score so easily?
Yeah.
And they did back their attack from deep within. I mean, Sergio Peterson, it looked like Sergio had started his career as an 18-year-old playing for the Southern Kings in Super Rugby. They just looked full of running. It was the kind of game that also suited Keegan Johannes at 10. I mean, he looked like he'd been playing there all his life, because there was so much front foot ball. He kicked particularly well. I don't think he missed one. It didn't matter where they scored. He banned them over. It's like a confidence builder going into the EPCR last 16 that the Bulls need. Because I've heard via the grapevine that they're targeting the EPCR Challenge Cup and they want to do the double. They want to do the double. They want to take Europe, and
Why wouldn't they want it?
And as Jakey says, all that matters is where are you positioned come the final whistle of the league stages.
Spot on.
Do you get your home quarter final? Do you potentially get a home semi-final? And then it's anyone's game. And that's where they want to be positioned in both competitions. So I thought it was a very important win for the Bulls.
Massive.
In the context of the struggle against Leinster.
Yeah.
And then to do it by resting Big Wilco Low and Steenenkamp. And still there were power. There was power in their forwards. They survived the yellow card. The Zebre side has scored some fantastic tries. And I know they did their best to keep Zebre in the game in that first half, because they kicked to their dangerous players all the time.
That's what I couldn't understand, man.
Run it back at us, we'll take it.
It was exactly the same with the Stormers, and I know we're going to get there. But I mean, the danger there for that Zebre team is that back three, that truly on the one wing, and that fullbacker there is deadly. And the Bulls fed them fed them on a great appetite of kicks to them. When Wilco and Ruan Okio came on in the second half, that's when things changed and you got much more stability in that Bulls team, and then it's kind of clicked. But my question is like, why? Why did they need Ruan and Wilco to kind of find their space again? Because that's a team. You've got Janus Kirsten in there, Mpilo Gomedi got a start. They've got some really, really good players in that team, but that pack just doesn't seem to click in whatever plan they're playing. The backs are electric, and given a sniff, they can go for it. Rocketman had a great game on the one wing. Devin Williams was on fire. You mentioned Sergio. And Keegan Johannes was man of the match. But there's just something about that pack. I don't know if it's their shape or what. I don't know what it is, but they're just not getting the best out of those legs. They look amazing on paper, right? You've got these powerhouse names there, but they're just not bossing anyone around the way they need to. And that needs to change if they're going to achieve what Jake said. On two fronts.
Look, there's a sneaking suspicion for me that they are going to peak at the right time. Their players are coming back. They're the one team that's shown an ability to stick a team away.
Well, when they switch on, like the semi-final.
Equally, they've shown an ability to kind of lose the plot in the last 15, 20 minutes at home, especially. Yeah. So there's been a lot of disappointment from them in the league stage, but rather in the league than have that horror show in the playoffs. Totally. The big thing for them that they'll be wary of is if they finish third, as looks likely, that they get the Stormers potentially in the last 8, because a South African derby element like we saw with Scarlets and Ospreys, the form book went completely out there. Scarlets smashed the Ospreys, and you would have thought, given the league
that's a great
battle,
point.
Ospreys would be the favourites.
That's a great point.
A Scarlets team that was turned over pretty comfortably by the Stormers a week before that. So the moment you get a all South African playoff game, the form book goes out the window, and especially if it's the Stormers against the Bulls, they've won 2 out of 10 against them. They got beaten this season with the Stormers team in horrendous conditions. That is the game the Stormers will be looking at. Can we qualify and play one of the South African teams in the quarterfinals? Get some momentum, and then boom, we're there.
Yeah.
So the key for me though was the Bulls got the 5 league points. They needed that to just kind of stay in that top 3 hunt. A little bit of breathing space from the Sharks. Like we said, the Sharks will be very disappointed. I can understand Sia Khaleesi going for the win. I think Mazuka would have kicked the kick. He's got one of the best strike rates, I think close to 90% in the URC. And there would have been 2 league points and 1 league point. You know, so I know he's going to be criticised for not going for the draw, because the draw is nicer than a defeat. But I think he was going for the...
It's lose-lose though, right? Because if he kicks it and they draw the game, people will be like, you guys had all these Springboks, why didn't you go for the win? But, you know...
Yeah, he was going to take a beating worse than they had kind of like taken over 80 minutes.
Yeah.
Just in terms of pride.
Yeah.
So, Sharks, very disappointing. Lions, I don't know, maybe they just... most of them are still in Cardiff, okay? Or they
looking ahead to Edinburgh.
They're looking ahead to Edinburgh. That's their big one. We fooled the Scots. We sent guys that look like our A team out there, and we showed nothing, and we just wanted a very good defensive run. We showed them in the second half, 0-0. So you always hear those guys that say, if they played the first 40 like they played the last 40, the score would have been 0-0.
Yeah.
But also hugely disappointing. They were humiliated. A donut, 0, a shocker, shutout. But the team that for me was the most disappointing in the context of the game was my beloved Stormers. To get 17-0 up after 6 minutes, one beautiful try created. Evan Ruiz scores the second. Just individualism from Ben Loader, from an error from Ulster.
Yeah.
Great drop goal from Sasha. 17-0 up. You control the game and you win it there. And you and I have discussed this ad nauseum over WhatsApp this weekend. Last week we said it was the headline on the show, Sasha, keep doing it your way. I didn't mean that way. I mean, as you call him, radio, he lost his frequency. And that to me was a decisive moment for a player of his brilliance, such genius in what he does. And Damian Willemse as well. They made 2 of the most blatantly stupid decisions that cost their team dearly. It was a 12-point swing in a game that just gave Ulster belief, gave that home crowd a bit of a voice.
Yeah.
And yes, they will look back and say, we took 2 league points from it. We're still up there. We actually improved our position on the table. We're in the top 8. But I think they just need a little bit of perspective in that just was unacceptable. That was 5 league points lost, not 2 gained.
Yeah. Yeah, it was... I mean, there's no way to really excuse what happened in that game. I think that the optics are not great for Sasha on that, because there's no reason to charge Bellacune in that situation. You kind of get the impression from looking at that the whole incident was all about Sasha, and that's not a good look for a guy who's very central to not only the Stormers but the Springboks plans going forward, and a player who could potentially be a long-term leader for the Springboks. So I put it down to just maturity. I think Sasha's an absolutely fabulous player, and I think his heart's 100% in the right place. But I think he is a kid who starred at a junior level and in a way has put teams on his back and won games on his own. And I think he has to come round to the fact that you can't do that at the pro level. It doesn't really matter whether you produce an A+ performance if the team, because of it, runs at C+. You almost need to be able to run it at a B- if it makes the team play at a B+. And I think I think it's just a change in his mindset around it. What I will say is, as much as those incidents were coach killers and were inexcusable and definitely contributed to the final result, don't underestimate, in my opinion, the contribution that Sasha and Gaza make to that team. Because at the beginning, and this is the way the Stormers play, it's helter-skelter, it's absolute chaos. You just see an artist throwing all different colors at a canvas, and after 30 minutes you think you're going to see just a hodgepodge, and he turns it around and it's something that you can sell for $1 million. And that's kind of how the Stormers play, is you are not sure whether they're about to take a massive pounding or if they're going to turn this thing around and score some electric tries. So Sasha, in that opening spell when they started experimenting with how they were going to kick and put in some really exciting kicking plays that reaped some rewards for them, Sasha was incremental, sort of at the heart of that. There was an instance where they kicked downfield. There's two Ulster guys ahead of him to go get the ball, and he instinctively reads where it's going to bounce, comes away with it, and the Stormers, continuity. They carry on playing. So he's a mastermind. Gaza's a mastermind. They can turn nothing into a try. And there were moments in that match where I think they really put the Stormers on the front foot, and are the reason that the Stormers were 17-0 up. And I think in a parallel universe, like I said to you, if they'd started Yuri Matia and they'd started Blommetjies at fullback, maybe things were a little bit more settled and ordered, but they probably trail that game the whole way and lose at 21-18. So those are kind of the dice that you roll with maverick playmakers like that, is that it's going to be gold or it's going to be a turd, and you kind of have to live with those.
I understand, and it's not 5 league points lost, it's 3, because they got 2, okay? But the point is, they were good enough to get the 5 league points, the bonus point try win there. Up until that moment, Sasha had been amazing.
Electric.
I mean, he was dictating the play, but from like an individual maverick.
Yeah.
More than the team collective. Mm-hmm. You can see that that Damien hasn't. He's coming back from a long-term injury.
Rusty.
He's a bit rusty. The stupidity that I talk about is you don't expect that of a player with such a rugby brain, with such a natural feel for the game as Sasha has. And like we said, the radio lost his frequency just for that moment. And I don't know if there was a build-up to that or if there was something off the ball.
It must have been.
But there seemed to be, he saw him out because he went back at him as well.
There was nothing to gain from it.
There were 5 Stormers covering an innocuous kick ahead. It was 38 minutes. You 17-7 up. How they had 7, we were wondering at that stage. The next moment, you're sent off. It's 17-12, sorry. It's 17-all at halftime.
Yeah.
It's the whole dynamic has changed. The 17-0 up after 6 minutes has become irrelevant.
Yeah.
They go into the shed. Wow, they've boosted. We fought back from 17-0, guys. We can take this game. We've scored 3 tries. And the message, I'm sure, from Dobbo at halftime was discipline, discipline, discipline. And let's just play with some intelligence. From the restart, we've got the ball won.
All of it.
And Damien also just kind of
about that, yeah.
He looks for the clean out.
Yeah.
That's the ball's already been won, and boom, there. Potential yellow card, no. Then penalty, they score from there, and it's a 12-point swing, and that's pretty much the game, because from there, the Stormers were just playing to try and get that 4th try bonus point. They lose 38-34 always. They play till the 82nd minute. They've got huge ticker, they got huge guts, but they're a team that should never look at that game and say, acceptable, job done on the road, 7 league points before we left, we'd take it. That should have been 10 league points. They're that good. And what was disappointing for me was their 2 best players made two fundamental mistakes that they shouldn't have. And I'm not talking you make a mistake because you think it's on
Yeah.
and you back your individual brilliance. Yeah. Those were brain implosions in that moment.
I agree.
And for the Stormers to advance in this competition, to cause a shock, because they're going to play away from home, given that, and I'm sure they will play they'll make the playoffs. They've got the 4 games at home. They need the Sashes of the world to not make those kind of poor decisions, and the Damien to be on fire and not make those decisions.
Yeah.
They are magnificent players. They would start in every team in the world, given their quality and their versatility. It is a coach killer. If Dobbo had any hair, if he had a perm, that perm would have been gone.
And especially disappointing, mate, because that scrum was rolling. They were crumpling Ulster up front. That Neertling Fashie yellow card.
Red card.
A red card.
A shocker.
Just absolute shocker. I mean, the Oaks' knee is on the deck when he's making contact. That ball carrier couldn't have gone any lower. I don't know where Neertling's supposed to go. If he goes any lower, it's a grass cutter and it's a red card. Like, I don't know what they want these guys to do. And I mean, as much as we all don't want players to get injured unnecessarily, this sort of hypersensitivity to the safety of the ball carrier at the expense of the defenders is insane.
That was absolutely a rugby collision.
100%.
He was so low going into that tackle. He was the second tackler there. This all happens at kind of a high speed, not that super slow-mo that gets shown over and over just at the point of contact. And how much lower could he couldn't go any lower if he was making a normal tackle, if that tackle had been upright. And what we've seen more and more in the URC and in competitions is that the attacker is deliberately bending their head.
They coach to go low.
And go low and basically run into the head and take the head blow and the player goes. So, they got back a player in the terms of Ulster lost a player with 8 minutes to go, but the momentum shift had already come. Their captain's gone. Neertling had been having an outstanding game. Look, the Stormers...
that'll get overturned. That red card will get overturned.
Oh, well, I hope to God it does, because it should never be... It's a rugby collision, okay? And so, in our books, Neertling Fashie hard done by the Stormers basically weren't hard done by, they did themselves hard. Suicide... I said in the Sunday Times column that radio loses its frequency. It was more suicide than sacrifice in the way they lost that game.
Totally.
It was one that you look back and, with all the greatest of respect to Ulster, they didn't win it. The Stormers certainly lost it. They have to be better. They get a 2-week break now because they're not playing in the Challenge Cup or the Champions Cup. Yeah. They regroup. They get 4 games at home. They've got to build that momentum, get on a roll, get 20 points, takes them up to 55. It should see them end about 5th. Meaning they either go to Durban or they go to Loftus and they do the business.
Beautiful.
And Sasha's genius again. And he doesn't seek out a fight with anyone on the win.
Wow.
So Stormers back home, but hugely disappointed in not getting the 5 league points. 1 from 4 for our South African teams. They can rest in the URC for a fortnight while Europe comes alive in terms of the Investec Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup. I've got to go back to you. We'll quick wrap on Super Rugby Pacific. Mohana in Christchurch.
Down, mate. What an incredible result. Good for them, hey? Fantastic stuff. I mean, that is great for that competition. In terms of the popularity of it in that region, I'm sure it's going to do wonders for it. And I think the Chiefs play the Reds this week, so it's lined up a nice humdinger at the top of the table. And I saw some great tries. I mean, it's exciting to watch. I'm not sure what the level is, and we'll find out when the Rugby Championship rolls around. But it certainly is a well-balanced competition. Where anybody can beat anybody on the day. And I even saw a tight head prop from the Western Force run 30 meters and score a try. So
little Richard Bands. In the week of Richard Band's birthday, there was a celebration. There was an ode to Richard to say, look, here's another 40-meter try. But if 45-29, the win for Moana, Adi Sevilla, obviously very inspirational again. Our guy, Macca, he got on the try scoring sheet for the Crusaders. But they were outplayed throughout their game. They scored the late try to bring it to 29. In Christchurch, that's the second most points the Crusaders have conceded in their history, the 45. So a fantastic win. And like you say, for the competition, it needs the Fiji Drua and Moana to win more and not just be these entertainers. Great to see the Aussie teams looking good in the context of the British and Irish Lions. 9-match tour coming up.
Only one Kiwi team won this weekend.
Yeah.
I think it was the Hurricanes, right? They beat the Waratahs. That was the only
And did they win? 57-12.
Right.
Hey? The Waratahs. We want to test ourselves across the ditch. Oops.
I saw a picture of Christian Cullen in the change room with Ruben Love, mate. I don't know if that Midas touch, mate.
Well, 57-12, a big win for the Hurricanes. So, good rugger there. I also switched over and watched a little bit of Japanese rugby.
No, you didn't.
I did.
What?
I did. I got so bored with the Bulls, I actually switched over and... in the first half and I was watching Cheslin Colby in action against Quagga Smith. There was one great moment. There was a charge down on Cheslin's kick, and him and Quagga were like running for the ball. He just edged Quagga there, but fairly entertaining. Just doesn't look like it's the same tempo, the same pace, mate. Going from Super Rugby then to that, and then to the Test Rugby that we call URC, and a kind of match like in Durban, which had those Test match qualities around it. But we got a 2-week break. Where do you see the South African team's position in terms of URC? Are the Lions still alive given their home run? Are the Stormers still alive? And who's going to finish 3rd and 4th, Bulls or Sharks?
I think the Bulls are going to stay where they are. I think the Sharks have got some issues to fix, and I think the home runs for the Lions and the Stormers are going to boost both of those teams into the playoffs. I think the Stormers do make a late run. Maybe this time off is a great opportunity to workshop and iron out some stuff. Aside from game time for Gaza, this break may be what they need. But they do need to come back and just cane it at home now and jump up that table. The Lions are 14th, mate. They've got to go up 6 spots. It's a long way to go, but 4 home games, that's a nice challenge for them, and I love those guys. I'm not going to tip them to do it because then they won't, but I'd love to see the Lions push up there. All
right, Lions, we love you. Travel safe. Stormers, I think you're home already. You follow us on the newsletter, on the WhatsApp channel. It's going to be a big, big weekend again. It's Champions Cup Rugby, not for any of our teams. It's going to be Challenge Cup Rugby for our teams, and we'll chat about that later in the week.